And I'm not sure we've gotten the PowerPoint up, and if not, it's okay. I'll give a description of that. In the middle of the Operation Polaris is the Office of Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration. And then around that are 4 satellites. And those 4 satellites are a literacy work group, human capital work group, accountability and testing work group, and student support work group and success. And in that, you will see that equity runs throughout each of those satellites. And so when we look at the Office of Educational Equity, when we're looking at that work, we have members of each of the work groups, but I sit as a floating member on all of those teams. And we drafted up questions what are those questions that we're going to ask to ensure that each of these groups are looking through the work, each of the work groups are looking at the work through an equity lens. And I'm also a member of the Governor's Drive Task Force, which is looking at how to achieve greater equity and inclusion in the education field. So this is a great time in North Carolina where all the pieces are aligning, and across those in leadership, we're looking at how do we ensure that each and every student in our state are getting the education that they deserve. And we're also looking at the work with Leandra, having an effective teacher in every classroom, an effective principal leading each school, and resources to support those instructional programs. So currently, some of the work that we are doing in the Office of Educational Equity within the agency that will push out across our PSUs in the state is facilitating the development of division equity and excellence plans to ensure alignment to the state board strategic plan and priorities. And those are established by the state board and the state superintendent. So, and I think it was in March, we had a Sneha Coltrane that presented her plan for her division around equity and excellence. And in April, we had our EC department that presented their plan around equity and excellence. And we will continue that work as each of the divisions are addressing their strategic plan to be a part of that and be a voice at the table to ensure that all of that work is being done through an equity lens. And so when I looked at the recommendations from the 2021 report that was shared at the state board meeting, there were some areas where I saw that there was a direct link to the Office of Educational Equity in supporting those recommendations. And I guess I should back up to share that in the Office of Educational Equity, we're at the very early stages, one, of identifying staffing for the office. Once we have that piece settled, we will then bring together a work group from across the agency so that we can have voices at the table as we look at our draft that we have for our mission and our vision and the work that we're going to do internally and externally. So that's another place where I definitely see that your organization would have a voice at the table. And so as we're looking at the recommendations, there are some that there's a direct connection and partnership, and then there are some that we will, that we will be able to indirectly be a part of. But to ensure, one of the recommendations was to ensure senior leadership who participated in the National Center's American Indian and Alaska Native Education Project Circles of Reflection Pilot Acts on recommendations prioritized in 3 core areas. I looked through how those were, I think you're given certain points to each of the areas, kind of where you were with those. But these are areas that I see that at the Office of Educational Equity, we can certainly be partners in that work. And also with the recommendation around urging public school administrators and boards of education to review and implement local policies related to the selection of athletic mascots and to educate all school personnel on the long-term damaging effects to students when inappropriate images and messages dishonor the American Indian culture. So I see that's another place as we are working with school teachers, principals, superintendents, and school boards, that we can have those conversations as well. And definitely connecting to you, whatever conversation you're having with those entities, then we can definitely be a support in that work. And another place that I saw was to explore new venues for disseminating the self-paced modules titled Culturally Responsive Teaching about American Indians. In the Office of Educational Equity, part of our vision is to have a website that supports the work in the Office of Educational Equity and have resources that school districts and our PSUs can visit if they have questions about something, or if we want to push out some information and connecting with our communities. I see that that is another place that that we can certainly be in partnership, and would certainly love to have someone from your organization as a part of the team that will be looking at how we move forward in the Office of Educational Equity. Sorry, my computer's trying to restart. So I definitely wanted to leave time for any questions that you may have, because we're at such the early stages of identifying the staff for the Office of Educational Equity that would be that director's position. We have draft mission and vision, but we would want to wait until that person is on board to really pull the teams together as we move forward. So I am happy to take any questions that you may have at this point, or any thoughts that you would like to share that we may need to think about as we're moving forward and really solidifying the work of the Office of Educational Equity.
So there's one question in the chat from Ms. Howard. Ms. Howard, do you want to unmute and ask, or do you want me to read it on the chat?
I have a mask on, so I don't know if I'm speaking clearly or not, but
We can be loud and clear.
okay. In doing so, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Are you looking at the poor performing schools first to target them, to bring them up to speed?
So that we're looking at, so when we're looking at the Office of Educational Equity, we're looking at all students. So we are in partnership and working with Dr. Bev Emery and her group on the schools that are identified as low performing by state standards. So we are doing that work, and I failed to mention that I am the lead for the literacy work group. And so as we're looking at how do we push out that training around letters and which districts are we working with, we gave districts an opportunity to determine who wanted to be a part of the work. But then we also ensured that we included those schools that have been identified as low performing. And another piece to keep in mind too is that our State Board of Education will release a dashboard that will track the data for the State Board Strategic Plan. That will be a huge piece for us in the Office of Educational Equity to be able to determine. I looked at some of your data before the meeting today, and I could see that would definitely be, we would want to have that as a part of that work so that we can support you in that as well.
Well, I would love to volunteer to be up there, since, it's no paid positions just yet. Just to get information to my district if we don't have it somewhere.
Okay. That is Margaret Howard.
Good morning. I'm Dorothy Yates, the chair of the Saponi Tribe and the vice chair of the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. I also serve on the State Advisory Council because I'm the chair of the Education Committee of the Commission. And my question is, will there be quarterly reports or monthly reports? How can we follow the work of the educational equity?
Yes, and there will be reports. We have not determined if they will be monthly, quarterly, or yearly, but we will definitely have reports. And the dashboard will be, that's a public-facing dashboard that will have the data on there. But we will provide support, some reports, and I will let you know once we solidify what that will be. Make sure that you know. If I had to think, I would think it would be quarterly. Or, first starting out, we may want to do something more frequent.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great question. And I would love to hear any ideas that you thought about as we were thinking about the Office of Educational Equity and how we can support you. Did you have some thoughts about what that could potentially look like?
Hi, this is Kennedy Evelyn. I'm a parent representative from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and I just had a quick question. Let's see, when will you know whenever they'll start hiring the equity staff, and will that be posted on like the DPI website, or how will that work?
Yes, it will be posted on the DPI website, and we are waiting for the budget approval from the General Assembly. It is in that request.
Okay, thank you so much.
But yes, it will definitely be on our website, and we would love to have diversity in our office and representation in our office. So I can definitely get those pieces to Dr. Silver when it's posted, as well as any additional information. Now, or is that the best way to connect? I want to make sure I'm following the right protocol.
I have a question. This is Frank Cooper from Hope County. I'm part of the Lumbee tribe. I also teach at Hope County High School. I have a question. Could it or would it be appropriate for this office to promote or suggest or urge schools with a certain percentage of population of Native Americans to offer American Indian Studies as Hope County High School does? As far as I know, Hope County High School's the only one, if not just one or two, that offers this class. But I know like Scotland High School, Purnell Sweat, Red Spring, many high schools have a high population of Native Americans that don't offer American Indian Studies as an elective like they do African American Studies and so forth. Is there something we can do to urge them to do that, or?
And that is a question for our curriculum and standards area, but I can get the information, the answer for you about that and get back with you.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Good morning, Angela Richardson from the West Pony Tribe. My question is, how will the office tie in with parental involvement? Giving information to the parents, because that's part of students, and providing resources of equity, because the parents also have that concern.
Absolutely. And the section that I referenced that is now a part of the Office of Educational Equity, we call them our IAPS team, but they work with our multi-tiered system of support as well as our social emotional learning piece. And they also have a family piece in there, as well as our EC division has a family and community connection piece in it. So that will definitely be a part of that work as well. And when we have that group to come together, we'll talk about what that will look like. And as we're looking at our literacy task force, we have a communication plan that's in place that includes our family and community. So I would think that we would model after what we're doing and some of that communication plan that we would have in place with that group. Any other questions? questions or thoughts, this is great. This is what we need, and we will definitely reach out because we'll have surveys and different things that will go out from the Office of Educational Equity to talk about or to ask your thoughts around some of these pieces as we're solidifying the office and our work. So definitely look forward to having your input as we move forward.
Then, this is Margo, Northeastern North Carolina, my Heritage tribe. My question also, for these low performing areas, I looked at that they really don't have grant writers. Could that be something that you add to your, your program, to have a grant writer to help those districts that does not have one?
That is a great question, and I know that's a need. I was a superintendent in the Northeast, in Bertie County, as well as Elizabeth City, Pasquotank, and I did some extensive work with Halifax County. So I know that that is definitely a need. I am not sure of how many staff members we would have, but we could definitely think about, as we're hiring and looking at skills, if we could have someone that would have that skill set. I'm not sure we would have enough staff to dedicate one person to that, but certainly it's something that we can include in terms of maybe resources on our website, or have someone that has that skill set that could be of support.
Or maybe pay them as they write for the grant and actually get the grant, a percentage of it.
Yeah, and I know that is how a lot of consultants will do that work, that you would pay them after after the grant is approved or received or awarded. And I'm not sure if we can do that at the State Department, but I'll certainly check on it. And it may be that we can provide a list of consultants that do what you just asked and have that skill set to write the grants, and have a resource on our page that you could reach out to some grant writers. That's a great question. Would that be helpful if we had a list, potentially had a list of folks that do that work, that you could reach out to?
Certainly, yeah.
Of course, I'll have to find out the ins and outs of the State Department, if that's, if we are okay to have those lists, or what process I would have to go through to have that done, but I will certainly look into it.
I know Cumberland County has a grant writer on staff. And like I said, I believe in not reinventing the wheel, just passing that information on. If you have a grant and you work for it and was successful, pass that on, or have a go-to place to implement that same grant, those wordings, those key points that will actually get a grant.
Okay, that is, I got you said, kind of like a place to house grants that were successful. So if you're looking for that particular grant, then you can go to it on the website, something that would be of support as you're writing yours.
Correct. It's, I can't get a person.
Great, that's great.
Thank you, Dr. Edmonds. Thank you for joining us today to provide updates. I'll say thank you for reviewing the report and emphasizing the alignment with our recommendations and the equity resolution. We certainly look forward to the data reports and the dashboard from the Office of Equity, Educational Equity. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Edmonds.
Thank you. You're welcome.
At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Greg Richardson if he doesn't mind going next in the agenda. Mr. Greg Richardson?
Yes, I'll be happy to go at this point. I want to say, first of all, Madam Chair, thank you for the invitation to be a part of the meeting today. And wanted to also say that I'm just elated to hear the good news from Dr. Edmonds about the Office of Equity and what that office is going to be working with and their goals. I think that is just very exciting and certainly a move in the right direction. So my hat is off to Dr. Edmonds and our team for the work that they're going to be performing over at Dpi. This has certainly been an exciting couple of months to kick off 2021 because we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe not quite out of it yet to speak of, but it certainly caused us to face some new challenges and made us to, I think, do things differently, think outside of the box, like these types of meetings that we're participating in today virtually. Certainly it's new and different, and it also brings its own challenges for us in some areas. But nevertheless, we proceed to do our work, and nevertheless we proceed to accomplish great things as you're already seeing today. First of all, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, Stacy, board members, council members, rather, for your commitment of service to this work and your commitment to Indian education in North Carolina. Certainly the annual report that just came out is exciting and provided some great information and data about our students in our state. So I think that's just great. I wanted to also thank, again, I think I mentioned Cumberland County in my last presentation, but I saw where they had a ceremony there in Cumberland County to recognize our Indian students. They had Eagle Feather ceremony, and Rodney and Jackson down there doing an excellent job of making sure that there's something put out in the forefront in terms of acknowledging our American Indian students, and I wanted to compliment them for doing that. And then secondly, on the student part, I wanted to say a word or two about our graduating seniors this year. I think enough can be said about our graduating seniors and what they've accomplished. They've accomplished great things under some really dynamic circumstances as Indian students in our state, and we should always recognize them where we can and give them some acknowledgement wherever possible. I want to say some things about some other good things, really great things, history-making things in our state today. And first one I'm going to mention is the fact that we've got Secretary Pam Cashwell now at the North Carolina Department of Administration. And she is the first American Indian to serve in the capacity as Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Administration, and that is where the Commission of Indian Affairs is housed. Now that makes history, but it's also a high point for us as Native people in our state and in the nation, because for so many years, for so long, we were not able to get American Indians appointed in these types of positions. So I want to compliment Governor Cooper for his wisdom and his zeal to make sure that we have American Indians representing our state. And I think his platform, as you know, the state that he wanted award the state to look like the state of North Carolina, that is the people who work in state government and hold positions. So I think that's very commendable. So Pam Cashwell is from Cumberland County. She is Coharie and Lundy. She's an enrolled member of the Coharie Indian tribe, and her mother, Gertie Bruin, worked here at the Commission of Indian Affairs many years ago, back in the late 70s and early 80s. I remember Pam when she was a young lady, following her mother around, going to the youth conference, participating in American Indian activities. So Pam has an extensive background and knowledge of our people, and she has a very strong commitment to the work that we do. So I'm just so pleased that we have her on board here at the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. Secondly, I want to give kudos to Mr. Dante DeSerio, who has been appointed as the CEO for the National Congress of American Indians in Washington, D.C. Dante, like Pamela Cashwell, are the first state-recognized Indians to hold these key type positions, and Dante certainly is the first to hold a national level position at the National Congress of American Indians in Washington, D.C. So it's so important to have our people representing us in these positions and with these agencies because they know the plight and they know the needs of our people. So, like Dr. Connie Locklear with FA, she's in a position now to speak up for our needs. She's in a position to not only speak up for our needs and these other people speak up for our needs, but they live it, they walk it, and so they know basically what we need out there. Another thing we want to compliment the governor on, the governor could issue a proclamation in May, and that was the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Proclamation, Executive Order. And he declared May 5th as Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Day in North Carolina. Secretary Pam Cashwell on that day read the proclamation on a YouTube broadcast statewide. So I think that is something that we should all be very, very proud of. And we need to, make sure that others in our state are knowledgeable of things that we have going on for our people and how important that is. I wanted to mention a couple of things about the legislature. You know that the North Carolina General Assembly is in town, and we have a legislative agenda each year with the Commission of Indian Affairs. The process it starts in January of each year, moving forward throughout the calendar year, and commission members bring recommendations to the quarterly commission meetings. And at the end of the year, December of each year, we gavel down the legislative agenda related to the needs and concerns of our population. So this year, there's several things on it, but two I do want to mention is the fact that we're asking for an assistant director position at the Commission of Indian Affairs. And that is so needed in our commission. We're one of a few divisions within our department and in-state government that do not have support staff like that. So we're asking for a new position, that's an assistant director position. We're also asking for funding to support our state recognition work and the activities centered around that. Just yesterday, Governor Cooper made an announcement about a huge amount of funding that's come to North Carolina, and his budget proposal that went to the General Assembly relating to those funds. I wanted to tell you that you probably already heard that $18 million out of that pot of money is slated to go to Indian tribes, Indian organizations, the Commission on Indian Affairs, etc., etc. Now, I need to tell you that that is a proposal to the North Carolina General Assembly. So what has to happen next is the General Assembly has to approve the governor's budget related to that work. So stay tuned, and you'll hear more about that as we move forward. Wanted to say too that additional funds are coming to the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs in relation to one of our grant programs, and that is our Section 8 housing program. We received an award from HUD in the amount of $2 million for rent assistance, and this particular fund is targeted for homeless. And you might not think of it, but we do have homeless situations in our Indian communities. But this funding is not only supporting homeless for our American Indian population, but it's supporting homeless statewide. And we had the fortunate opportunity to be designated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to facilitate that process. So we're going to be working with our tribes, we're going to be working with our cities and counties, making them aware that these funds are available, and we will implement that program statewide through the local housing authorities, Indian Housing Authority, local housing authority, and Indian programs. So I thought that was very exciting. So $2 million on top of another $18 million that's been announced, that's headed towards Indian country and the state. So that's quite a bit of money, folks, coming to address our needs. And so I think it opens up the door for a lot of other opportunities. The funding coming to the commission for the housing program and for the ARP. These are what was formerly referred to as the CARES Act funds. There's a federal funds coming to the state. Will result in additional positions. So like the Office of Equity with the DPI, we're going to be soon after we find out from the legislature and we've got all the approvals in place for these funds. we'll be announcing some new positions with the Commission on Indian Affairs. On the education side, and listened with interest in relation to Dr. Edmonds' presentation regarding the hiring of new staff for their division in Dpi. And I wanted to just mention for her reference as well as your reference, the Commission has two programs that are specifically designed to address Indian workforce type efforts. And that's our Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act program. That program provides assistance for students who want to go into a community college setting to obtain primarily skilled jobs, skill-related jobs, certificate-related jobs, and those kind of things. But it's important for you to know that. So as you work with high school students that are graduated this summer, keep that in mind. So those that are not college-bound, that is a four-year institution. Please direct them to us. Candace Lowry is our director of that program. And another program we have is the Supporting Underserved Native Students program, which is similar to the workforce program, but the funding is not as extensive. So we can actually pay for things like tuition, books, and fees for the students who are eligible for the program. And so they do have to meet certain eligibility requirements. So just keep that in mind as you conduct your work and go about having conversations with other Indian educators as you encounter issues with students and counseling with students. Please make them aware of the opportunities that we have here at the Commission on Indian Affairs. So on behalf of Secretary Pamela Cashwell and our Chairman Ricky Burrell of the Commission on Indian Affairs and our entire Commission membership and staff, again, I want to congratulate Stacey for what you do, for your commitment to our students in this state. You're making us proud. The annual report certainly includes some very valuable data that we can all use in terms of our grant writing, applying for additional services for our population. So thank you for the opportunity today, Dr. Locklear, to present before you. And at this point, I'll entertain questions if you have any. Thank you.
I'd just like to mention that Dr. State teachers posted for Cumberland County's equal feather ceremony that Mr. Richardson referenced. Thank you, Mr. Ronnie Jackson, for your leadership and implementation of this ceremony.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions for Richardson at this time? Mr. Richardson, we're certainly most appreciative of the governor's support and the advances that he's made for our people. That support's definitely necessary and it's appreciated. I would like to mention that Dr. Austin's time is coming to an end on the State Board of Education. And on behalf of North Carolina Commission on Indian Affairs, would it be possible, would you mind reaching out to the governor's office about American Indian representation on the State Board of Education?
Yes, ma'am. We can certainly do that. We have a commission meeting coming up June 4th. And I would yield to Mrs. Dorothy Yates, who's the chair of our education committee. I believe her committee has already met this quarter and has some items that they're going to be presenting at our June 4th meeting to the commission. But I believe that she can, as chair, bring that forth to the full commission during our June 4th meeting. And that will certainly set the stage for a conversation with the governor regarding ballot point. So we're very happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those updates from the North Carolina Commission on Indian Affairs. I'm so proud of our people representing American Indians in positions that can advocate and move our generations forward. Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Dr. Locklear, one additional thing. I see you've got Dr. Tiffany Locklear from the University of North Carolina, Pembroke, coming up today. She'll be doing a presentation. I will not be able to stay with you for the entire meeting. But I just wanted to put in a point that you might bring up, and that is for our Indian Youth Unity Conference that's coming up in June. And it's so important for for our students to be engaged. And I've seen students over the years, some of our folks on this AC and certainly on this call might have participated in the youth conferences in years past. What that does, it provides an opportunity for our youth who are graduating from high school to be on a college campus for a couple of days and get a college experience. However, this year, I believe it's going to be virtual because of the COVID situation, but it's still an opportunity to expose our students to college life and what goes on at college. And so I'd appeal to you all as a body and as a council to encourage all of our tribes to make sure that there's an opportunity for students to attend this year's youth conference. So if you help us out with that, I certainly appreciate it, because we need as many students as possible to get this experience. And I believe too that because it's a virtual experience this year, there may not be certain the costs that will be involved in a face-to-face setting, such as having to pay for registration to go to the conference. I don't know all the particulars about the setup for the youth conference this year, but I will have to assume that because it's going to be virtual, there is an opportunity for a lot more of our students to participate in the conference and to gain and get experience in terms of what goes on with the SACE. So, with the youth conference. But it's very important, so I encourage you to advocate where you can to get as many of our students exposed to the youth conference in June of this year. Thank you again.
Thank you. I always enjoy the Evening Unity Conference, and that's Dr. Lee's leader clear. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. At this time, we're going to ask Mr. Ronnie Jackson if he would share some of the highlights concerning Cumberland County's ceremony, if he would like to speak on that briefly.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate it. This has been the second year that we've been able to have the Eagle Feather ceremony. Last year we had planned for a huge ceremony, keynote speaker, the drums, everything, but because of the virus, because of COVID, last year and this year it had to be a drop-in ceremony. But we have 87 graduating seniors from Cumberland County American Indian students. Not all of them were able to come through because they were either at a ball game, or had a job. So we had a big turnout of students. But we're just so happy to be able to do this. 2 years ago, our superintendent, Dr. Marvin Conley, asked me in a principal leadership meeting one day. He said, "I need a real quick answer from you. Are you for or against the Eagle Feather ceremony?" And I said, "I'm for it." I said, because the Eagle Feather is a symbol of identity, not a symbol of choice. And he said, in front of all the principals and everybody, he says, "We're going to have an Eagle Feather ceremony." So from that moment on, we've had a great time with this. The students have enjoyed it. The families have enjoyed it. We're taking baby steps because even though we have this ceremony, the students aren't allowed to wear the feathers to the graduation. But like I said, we're taking baby steps. We've got the ceremony in place. Hopefully by next year or year after next, we can get it where they can wear the feathers at graduation. But we're just so excited and so happy that we have the support of the administrator, the superintendent, and his cabinet and the board supporting this program for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. And I share your sentiments. Awesome work, Cumberland County. Next on our agenda, we have our State Board of Education member for the Sand Hills Education Region, Dr. Olivia Oxenine. Before she speaks, I would like to recognize Dr. Oxenine for serving as the liaison to the council. The service of Dr. Oxenine is certainly appreciated by our council. Dr. Oxenine has been instrumental in reviewing state advisory reports and assisting with crafting recommendations for annual reports. She's also assisted with the planning of the 2020 Educational Summit as we focused on tribal consultation and meaningful collaboration to improve district and school level support for American Indian students. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Otzenine, and thank you again for your service to Stacy. Dr. Otzenine, you have the floor.
You have to always remember that one little detail called unmute. So thank you for those kind comments, Chair Lady Locklear. I feel as though I've been so attached to Stacy on and off more consistently since 2012. But all my years go back to the early days of the council, along with Betty Mangum, and Mr. Richardson probably has some images of those times floating somewhere in his memory bank because he has been kind of right there with us along the way from the inception of the legislation to the beginning of the council, and all the many members who serve on the council over time, giving the best of your thinking and your wishes and your wonderful traditions and values, native values around ideas that are for the betterment of our Indian students. So thank you for those kind of comments. And I also want to extend a note of gratitude to Dr. Silver for calling my name out last week with several others that she recognized, members of the Stacy Council, outgoing members. So thank you, Dr. Silver, for doing that. I was not expecting it, and I was sitting there behind all that plexiglass, so I felt as though I was in a house of mirrors. So you probably didn't see a couple of tears kind of drip down my cheek, but again, thank you. I don't have a long report. It will be no more than about 5 minutes worth of suggestions that I want to leave with you, and leave it up to you to decide how you want to proceed. Our last state board meeting was a biannual planning meeting. We do this twice a year. We spend an extra day in session to rethink our strategic plan, and in a way, we are provided our own source of training. We spent a lot of time last week discussing implementation science. It was a fascinating topic, one that I will say that I never sat through a 3-hour session on that, so it was very good. So it was really our work, our professional development, along with our one-day state board meeting where we dealt with action items and discussion items and the full agenda. And the Stacy report, your report, was approved last Thursday. I will say to you that in the last month, the State Board of Education has received, I believe, 4 letters from parents in Gaston County, and they are raising concerns about the South Point High School has chosen I don't know how long this mascot has been in play, but the name of the mascot is Red Raiders. So 4 individuals have submitted letters to the State Board of Education asking for some guidance and some intervention in removing or retiring that mascot. I have responded to the individuals. I have, on behalf of the State Board, and I have expressed my opposition to Native American, American Indian mascots and imagery. I've also said to them, which is true, and I will say to you, it's a sensitive topic, and it requires a lot of partnership building, understanding each other's viewpoints. I like the phrase that Mr. Jackson used just a minute ago in talking about the eagle feather ceremony and the plan to take baby steps. Unfortunately, we do have to take baby steps, but in the long run, I think the baby steps are the winning steps to take, because we win over minds, we win over hearts, we win over support, and that's what our Native American students need in our school districts and our LEAs. So what I would say to you is this. The State Board's position is going to be leaning toward local decision making. And that's the position the state board takes regardless of the issue. There might be some squabble around athletics. There may be some dissension around EOG's testing. There may be dissension around the American history standards. We get hundreds of letters on a weekly basis, but the State Board of Education, right, wrong, or indifferent, defers to local decision making. It has been the philosophy of the State Board for years to lean in that direction. I have said to Chair Davis, Chair of the State Board of Education, that I will be working closely with you, along with Chair Lady Locklear and Dr. Silver, to be proactive, not reactive. The letter writing campaign is necessary, but it is reactive. It's reactive to a situation that exists. And these mascots have been out there for, I don't know, maybe some high schools and districts for decades and decades. So you have a lot of affinity and loyalty from alumni around these mascots. So what I would say to you is maybe plan a couple of hours down the road in a future meeting and come up with some guidelines around policies that the state board can consider and adopt policies for local school systems to guidelines to consider when they are making decisions around mascot selection. So it doesn't need to be anything extensive. It could just be, I don't know, maybe a framework, a one-page framework of guidelines around what to consider, kind of the do's and don'ts, if you want to frame it that way, of mascot selection. I think it would be an endeavor, an investment of time that is worthwhile. It is very appropriate that SACY take on a task like this. It fits your role. It fits the legislation that has created you perfectly. Now, about the South Point High, let me close by saying this. Chair Davis has reached out to the superintendent, and he has spoken with the superintendent. His name is Dr. Booker. I don't know him. Dr. Silver, you might have worked with him in your capacity there in the agency. Chair Davis did have a conversation with him. He asked him what is their plan on retiring, what is the barriers, what is causing them to be resistant to retiring Red Raider, and the answer was rather vague in general. I think there is a school board member, he might be chair of the school board, who believes in keeping the mascot. So we know when you have elected officials are surrounding mascots, then the work of the SACY, the work of the state board, the work of the Indian community in Gaston County is going to be going to have to take a different probably approach. I have reached out to the superintendent. I wrote him a letter a couple of days ago, and I'm waiting for a reply, and I'm sure that he will reply in due time. I'm going to talk with him, set up a phone conversation or WebEx, and begin a discussion about working toward the retirement of the Red Raider. It will probably take some time. It may take more than one conversation. I'm going to make him fully aware that there is a state advisory council on Indian education, that it is in the law, that it has a legacy around it going back to the late 80s, and that we have 2 legislators seated on the council. And that may gain his attention. And at some point, I will certainly entertain the prospect of involving the 2 legislators in a discussion. So, recapping, I would like for you to set aside some time in the future and think about guidelines that can move us forward around the elimination of Native American mascots in our public schools in North Carolina. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you might have.
Dr. Oxenden, there are not any questions in the chat as of yet. Are there any questions for Dr. Oxenden?
Madam Chair, if I might, this is Susan. If I might be recognized for just a moment, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Dr. Oxenden for her work. I worked at this agency since 2007, and when I tell you that it makes a difference to have an American Indian sitting on that school board, please know that I have seen that to be true. Dr. Oxenden never misses an opportunity to raise up American Indian students. And I mentioned the word in the state board is the advocacy of knowing, as in knowing American Indian culture, having lived there, not to say that we always agree, but when you have a person on that state board who you know comes from a place of knowing. And when Dr. Oxenden told me in a conversation a few weeks ago that her father was a tobacco farmer, well, I grew up on a tobacco farm, literally tobacco in my backyard, and my grandfather was a tobacco farmer. So it's that place of knowing, somebody who knows your experience, and it makes a difference. And Dr. Tiffany mentioned to Mr. Brigg about representation on that state board and talking about the governor's office about that, because the replacements are not, there's not American Indian representation. So I just want to stress that how that's an important advocacy point for both the commission and the state board, because it makes a difference. And I just want to say personally, I'm one of 3 American Indians, one of which I just hired myself in this agency. So having another advocacy voice within that structure is very much appreciated. So I just wanted to personally thank you, Dr. Oxenden.
Thank you, Dr. Silver. Let me just add a point about my seat on the State Board of Education. I do represent the Santos group, that we have a critical mass on American Indians in our region. But I represent all Indian students across the state, Murphy to Manio. So my appointment is by the governor. I was appointed by the governor, 8-year appointment by Governor Croy, and rightfully so. This comes with the territory of being the governor. They appoint many individuals to many posts, councils, boards, so on and so forth. I will stay in this seat. I don't plan to resign the seat until the General Assembly confirms. It's the responsibility of the General Assembly to confirm appointments. So I'm a short stay. There's no doubt about it. I probably won't be here many months in the future, but I will speak up, as I always have, for the cause of Native American students. So you can just bank on that to take place. So as my time is ticking down, anything that's on your minds over the next 6 months, you need to shoot me emails and text messages. So, but please do spend some quality time around the guidance for mascots.
Dr. Oxenden, thank you for those informative updates and your continued work on the State Board of Education. And certainly thank you for your attention to the mascot issue. We have invited Dr. Leslie Locklear today to provide some insights on positive identity and its importance in American Indian communities. Again, thank you for your service to Stacy. Thank you.
Dr. Locklear, if I may, could I make a comment right quick?
Absolutely, please proceed.
I just wanted to say thank you to also to Dr. Lily Oxenden for her service on the State Board of Education, her commitment of service. You know, she has not just been a person to take the seat. She's been vocal. She's been very active in terms of bringing issues to the forefront. You know, and so it's very important to have, as you mentioned before, as we talked before, about the importance of having our people in leadership roles like this. So I just want to say a hearty thank you to Dr. Oxenden for her commitment and for work and service to not only our Indian people in North Carolina, but also to the state of North Carolina. Thank you, Dr. Oxenden.
Thank you for those such kind remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Oxenden. Next, On our agenda, we have with us the Director of the Federal Program Monitoring and Support Division, Dr. Latricia Townsend. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Townsend.
Thank you for having me. I'm elated to be here today to share a few updates. Might I share my screen? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Are you able to see that?
Not as of yet.
Try again.
We can see it now, Dr. Townsend.
Perfect. Put it in presentation mode. Well, I'm elated to be here this morning to speak with you. And before I jump in, I too want to thank Dr. Oxendine. In my short stay at DPI, I've had the opportunity to interface with her on several occasions. When she has questions, she does not hesitate to reach out to ask those questions, and just the sense of love and advocacy that permeates. So thank you, Dr. Oxendine, for your service. Well, I am here today to speak with you about federal programs. I have put together a few updates for you, and then at the end of the presentation, I have a couple of opportunities for service. And so I like to make sure that you're aware of those two opportunities. And so just a brief introduction. I am Latricia Townsend. I serve as Director of Federal Program Monitoring and Support. I've been on the job for about a year now. It has been a wild ride. Our portfolio contains usually about $700 million and covers the consolidated portfolio from Title I up through Title VII. However, in the wake of the pandemic, our office has taken on several other programs, and now we're up to a bit over $6 billion that we are managing. I'd like to then talk with you about ESSER, giving you an update about that particular program, and then I will speak about ESSA, and then we'll talk about next steps and how you might be able to get involved. And so, ESSER, these funds are our pandemic recovery funds. The amount that school districts receive is proportionate to the amount that they receive for Title I Part A. These funds have a very long, runway of when they can be used. And when you look at the funds in sum, these funds will be available to school districts until 2024. Equitable services, that is what we provide to private schools. Typically with Title I, it is required in the first ESSER legislation. However, it's not required in ESSER 2 or ESSER 3. Private schools who are, and this is a point of advocacy, private schools that you know in your regions are eligible for funds through the governor's set of funds. It is the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools. And so we are taking applications as we speak for those funds. About $84 million was set aside for that particular program, and we have not gotten a lot of traction with that one. What I do want to point out to you where we need your help, ESSER 3 actually requires local input. And so local schools should be putting together a plan for how they are going to use their ESSER dollars. Many of them are holding listening sessions, and at the end of the day, their plan must be posted on their website. With ESSER 3, it does have a significant component that requires districts to focus on reducing learning loss. And so 20% of the funds that come to schools through this program must be used to address learning loss as a result of the pandemic. And so that is ESSER 1, 2, and 3. So now moving into just a general federal programs update, we continue to try to staff up in our area, and so we have been able to add to our staff additional personnel to assist us with the migrant education program, which is Title I Part C. We have also added a new pre-K consultant. This is an area of interest. This comes out of Title I funding. And so we are always really pushing early learning, early literacy. And so we now have someone who is assisting us with assisting districts in how they deploy their Title I dollars in this space. The 21st Century Learning Communities, we just added a new staff member to that. And I'll tell you a little bit more about 21st Century and an opportunity that's coming up if you'd like to kind of drum up support and drum up interest for this program for us. And then last but not least, we are in the process of bringing on another person to assist with school improvement. And so really helping our CSI and TSI schools. And so when we think about implementing our ESSA plan, we're in a position now, so we support all the titles, but right now we are offering a bit of extra support in the area of Title III. And so with Title III, these are our English language learners. And as it relates to Native Americans, we do have the Eastern Band of Cherokees that often take us up on this type of funding. So at this point, we are offering assistance as they create their LIEP plans for the upcoming year, and then Title I Part D, which looks at students who are neglected or delinquent. So we service many of the students that are in penal institutions across our state, and so we've just recently provided technical assistance for that particular program, and that recording is available. As it relates to our consolidated portfolio, we do a series of monitoring events where we go out to ensure that individuals are using their funds according to how they stipulated they would on their application. And they are just implementing these programs with fidelity and with strength. And so we are now entering our next set of monitorings that will take place over the next 4 years. And then CCIP is our grants administration system. We have just put in the changes for FY22 or the 21-22 school year, and we are offering technical assistance as schools begin to put together their grant applications to apply for their funds. Okay. And so in terms of where we are with our fund sources, LEAs, charters, they have so much money coming at them. And so I do see spend rates down a little bit across all of our portfolio. And I think it really harkens back to the fact that so much money is available within the ESSER funds. And so I am seeing a little bit less spending across the regular titles. In terms of funding opportunities that could be advertised or promoted, we will be bringing on a new group of 21st Century Learning Community sites. So these are our after-school program opportunities. The next cohort would cover the next 3 school years, and these grants can be up to $50,000 per year, up to $400,000 per year to run a quality after-school program. Migrant education, we're in the process of administering summer mini grants. McKinney-Vento summer mini grants have recently been approved by the board, and there will be another round of funding that goes to support homeless students through the American Rescue Plan. Are there questions that you have for me at this time before I give you the 2 opportunities for service?
Dr. Townsend, this is Olivia.
Yes.
I just, good morning.
Good morning.
I want to, I cannot describe the scope and breadth of the work that you do in federal programs. It just amazes me the more I learn about your operation. It's extensive and very much tied to regulation and laws and services to our students, just and families and communities. One of the things I want to probably underscore a point that you made and underscore it for the attention of Stacy is the program for the homeless, the McKinney-Vento program, is that correct? Legislation that created the program?
Yes, ma'am.
One of my graduate students at Pembroke did a research study on that law and program, and what she discovered, to her amazement, is so little is known in the public schools, because she interviewed several principals and not central office, but principals about this program. And she was amazed at how, you have, I suppose there's a contact in each school that works with students who need services. But the reason I'm saying this is to Stacy, please ask in your counties, and if you know anyone in school systems, like principals, someone on the board, teachers, get very familiar with this program, because the services are incredible. So I'm doing a shout out for that program.
Yes, and we have, I guess, a statewide coordinator who works with, and so usually we call them homeless liaisons. And so not necessarily at every school, but most districts have a liaison that actually works to make sure that these services are provided. And so it could be transportation costs, it could be emergency assistance with regards to housing, just for a brief instance until they're connected with other agencies. For me, this program just is really about advocacy and helping people understand what things are at their disposal as they're facing such a tough situation.
Yes, so many great resources through that program. Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. And then one of the things that I always want to do is provide context or information about how people can get involved. And so what you will see coming from DPI will be our Sr3 State Plan. So as part of the American Rescue Plan, it is required that we create this state plan. And one of the requirements is that we have input from the community. And so I'd like to suggest that Stacy, and it could be if you desire, we can schedule a session. You'd be able to look at the plan. The plan should be going up in the next day or so for public comment, so you can actually make a public comment. But I would really like to really convene. It lists out representatives to whom we should speak to. So students, teachers, and it does speak about tribal consultation. And so perhaps within this group, finding a group of individuals that would like to come together to look at the plan and offer any suggestions. And then also within federal programs, we have something called the Committee of Practitioners. Individuals are appointed for 2 to 3 years. And we have people who have terms of service that are coming to a close. And so it would be great to have someone with Native American interest at heart to be nominated for this particular program. So the Committee of Practitioners is outlined in ESSA, and these individuals look at the North Carolina ESSA plan and they provide input as we're thinking about making any changes or suggestions. And so this group, we meet at least twice a year, but we convene if there are additional if there are additional things that we need to address. So it would be an opportunity for you. And then I've listed the primary ESSA contacts, so myself, the assistant director, and then our section chief that really helps assist across all the various consolidated titles. And so that is the conclusion of my presentation. I welcome any additional questions.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend. Are there any questions for Dr. Townsend at this time?
Yes, I have a question. This is Melissa Lee. I just wanted to know, again, what is the ESSA?
Oh, the ESSA is the Every Student Succeeds Act, and it actually came out of, initially out of legislation in 1965, and it basically outlines what would need to be done to improve the educational status of all children. And so Every Student Succeeds Act, it covers the various title programs that come from the federal government. So for instance, Title I, everybody hears Title I, but Title I is really designed to assist students who are at risk for, for not being successfully academically because of their income status. Title II is what we use to, it basically lists out all of the titles that I've been referring to. And so Title II would assist educators in terms of principals and teachers. Title III looks at English as a second language or English language learners. Title IV is well-rounded education. And so, and then Title IV-B is 21st century. So each of these has a set of criteria as prescribed by the federal government to address various areas within education. And so as a state, we actually receive funds in each of these areas. And that those dollars are then sent back out to the various school districts to meet the needs of students and teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend. As it nears the time for the representation, or could you send us out a reminder or direct Stacey, contact Stacey directly so that we can certainly have that voice?
Yes, ma'am, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much. Sure. Thank you for those updates today.
You're welcome.
Hello, this is Dorothy Yates. I had one question on the 21st CCLC grants that begin at $50,000 for the after-school programs. Do these have to be academic, like extracurricular, or are they remedial? Or what is the emphasis of those after-school programs?
Both, and so typically it is for enrichment as well as remediation.
Okay, thank you.
And then one that I didn't mention that I put, and I'll put some links in the chat, another one that is coming up, but it would not be for LEAs, it's only for nonprofits. It is our Ellis grants. And so Ellis grants can be used during the body of the day or after school, and it is only for nonprofits. You can partner with the school district, but an LEA would not be able to apply. So I'll populate some links there, and then what I can do is I guess I could put some links there, but I also could give you kind of like just a quick like one pager on some of those with additional links.
Thank you again, Dr. Townsend.
You're welcome.
From the Division of of Advanced Learning and Gifted Education, Dpi State Consultant Beth Cross joins us. Ms. Cross, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I believe that Sneha Shah-Coltrane, my director, is also on.
Hello, everybody. Tiffany, I hope you don't mind. I also decided I wanted to come chat because I hadn't been to safety and God for years. So I also wanted to come spend time with the group. So thank you so much for having us. So I am Sneha Shah-Coltrane, and this is Beth Cross. And we have not been to safety in quite a while. I think we came maybe 4 years ago or so and worked with you on some AP data and things of that nature. So we look forward to actually renewed partnership that's going to kind of work with you all to be more of an ongoing presence. So that'll be wonderful. What we did want to kind of share with you today was kind of our work the last couple of years and what we wanted to make sure you knew we were focused on, and also talk with you about some policy changes that we feel like is really going to help all of our students, including our native population. So when you get a chance, do look at the Equity and Excellence brief. That brief, we can pull up if we want. I'm not sure if that's helpful, Kelly. But it really focuses our effort on equity and excellence in gifted education and advanced programming. With that idea of kind of a long-term strategic focus on ensuring that we really, more than ever before, look at students' strengths and needs and really develop their talents, as well as looking at trends and data to help really ensure that we are addressing some of the opportunity gaps that we know exist alongside belief gaps, etc. So we have been working with our districts and really looking at how to improve mindsets, policies, and practices. Thank you so much, Kelly, for our districts and really talking about how we must reframe our lens, look at multiple ways to see a child's talent, providing a range of services and not necessarily a one-size-fits-all model, looking again at disaggregating data, which you all are such a model for, and really continuing to do that. And then really also focus on the professional development piece. And so this is part of our work, and we want to make sure you were aware of that and look forward to partnering with you more on this initiative. And and it's more than an initiative, right? It's really this larger frame of how do we ensure that we are working on the behalf of developing every single student that come to us. So with this project and this call to action, we actually are going to be updating our AIG program standards. For those of you that are newer, I actually worked with you all on this 8 to 10 years ago. But this idea of, in our state, our laws focus on every district creating their own plan of how they identify and serve students who have advanced learning needs. So, but with that, we have to develop some policy around it and some program standards. So these are not student expectations, but they are program expectations. And so we're actually going to be revising those, and they're at the board now. We wanted to make sure we got your input and kind of share with you what we're doing. So Kelly, if you don't mind going to maybe, Beth, do you want to go to the reference version maybe?
Well, or I can share my screen, Kelly, and I can have the standards on the slides. I have a few that are highlighted, or we can go to the red version if you'd like.
Tiffany, what do you think will be better, or Kelly?
I am so sorry. I'm having trouble muting and unmuting this morning. Take a minute. No, that would be absolutely fine. But if you want to share your screen and share the slides, that probably would be best. That'd be fine.
Okay.
And so if Beth pulls that up, just to let you know, you also have 2 other attachments that are that actual document. So we're going to give you a quick summary here, and we'll love your feedback and thoughts. And then hopefully we'll also have some time on how else we can work with you all. Like I said, it's been a few years since we have touched base. But you do have those documents, and please do feel free to look at those. But again, these are program changes that districts determine how to address them with our support. And with all of the PD that we've been doing to help them really look at students from a strength-based model, and really not making assumptions about students, not coming from one perspective, but really helping have students show us their talents in multiple ways, so we can then capture that potential and really grow it. So Beth, if you want to kind of go through the changes that we did.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Sam, for the background as well. It's really it's so important to our districts, and they really study these changes and revisions because they are writing a district response to each of these, and that becomes their AIG plan for the next 3 years. So we're revising the program standards now. And then they're anxious, of course, to get the revised standards as soon as the board votes, and we know what the revised standards are. They are ready to put things in place because we have been really in our Equity and Excellence Strategic Initiative for the last couple of years. Pandemic or no, we have been moving forward, and all of our institutes talking about our different critical actions. And they have been really reflecting on things in their own districts and planning changes that they would like to make in their next plan. So it's really an exciting time.
Really, it's about becoming more inclusive,
right,
and not it being exclusive, right? We want to continue meeting the needs of the students who walk in kindergarten who are reading Harry Potter. But we also have students walking in, maybe reading in a different language, or students who may have not had access to that book. But how are we really capitalizing on students' potential and not putting up barriers?
And so there are several standards, starting with student identification all the way to program accountability. Really great framework for any program. And I'm going to highlight those ones that really speak to our Equity and Excellence Strategic Initiative, where we might have more conversation with your team and our team about things that we might need to include, or at least, if not in the standards, we also have unpacking guides that we also give our districts, because we really want them to understand completely what each practice is asking for, so that their response is in alignment. And so we explain what the practices mean in an unpacking document. So I did want to just give you an idea of some of the changes, the overview of changes, because I won't go into detail on all of these, because you have the documents, of course, in front of you. But we did revise for certain things like parents and guardians. We were saying parents and families, and we wanted to ensure that we're focused on the caregiver of the student. And then because this is in their AIG plan, we did reorder and combine some practices because maybe it just flowed better. And as they're working on their plan, it makes sense to progress a certain way, or to ensure that they're understanding it based on their responses from last time. We know whether or not it was a lot. And sometimes we combine practices because they were repeating responses. And we knew that there may be some clarification needed. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, integrating the language from our strategic initiative. And so we'll start with standard 1, student identification. There are 3 practices right here in the very beginning that speak to, screening and referral processes, ensuring that there are multiple opportunities for students to show their strengths. And that's what Sam was speaking to. This is not a referral once or a screening once. This is an ongoing process. And so they speak to how they do that in their district. And then we do have a practice specifically for our underrepresented populations. And so we wanted to make sure that you saw 1C as well. That does list different populations. And when we do ask that they are ensuring that their screening and referral and identification processes and procedures align with their demographics of their districts or school, if it's a charter school. And then B, I wanted to highlight because within this standard, there's a practice that speaks to, how do you know in your district that school A and school Z are following the same procedures? How do you know that everyone is following these equitable processes and procedures? So we do ask that they're monitoring.
And that is, if you don't mind, I just want to highlight, especially having, knowing some of Stacy's kind of general recommendations and kind of work. We feel like all of these really speak to ensuring that and working towards not making assumptions about students. And really, so often in some of our districts, if you're not following the procedures, you're sometimes letting biases get in the way. Oh no, that kid can't because of X, or that kid can't because of Y. Versus if you actually follow the process, it's every student, needs to have an opportunity to show us what they're doing in universal screening, et cetera. So throughout these, just know our intent is really to mitigate barriers and to prop up processes and systems that help us to not automatically and systemically look over students. And so often we know that in particular our native students, our indigenous students, sometimes are overlooked, and we do not want to do that. We've started to make some progress with AP, not as much as any of us would like, but a little bit of progress. We want to keep that going, and of course that starting in kindergarten.
Right, and I think practice C really works with that very well. We want to make sure that whatever systems they have in place, that they're looking at their data for 1C, that their systems are not designed to be exclusive. Their systems are designed to be inclusive. And so when we get to program accountability, that brings in the data. So they can look to see what populations are we not finding or including, or which ones are not identified. And the work that we've done the past couple of years has set them up for being able to do that. And then, we're so excited. Sneha is such a great leader. We're going to be doing data dives in the fall, so that's like the cherry on top with this work, so that they can see where their problem areas are, and then ensure that they create systems of inclusion. So thank you so much for adding that, Sneha. I'm going to go on to standard 2, which is about programming. This is where we talk about our services. And it's so important to us that when we're talking about services, sure, we're talking about K-12 programs, we're talking about an array of services, but we are, again, trying to emphasize or re-emphasize and highlight that these services develop student strengths, that there are intentional learning experiences, several different domains, so several opportunities for students to show their strengths, and they're not dependent on the student's demographic background or economic needs. And that was really important for us to add this sentence in the standards language, because the standard is the umbrella or overview of each of these practices. And I'm going to just shift to C. A and B are talking about program services in academic and intellectual areas of meeting those needs of students, but also social emotional needs. And then C is about integrating the AIG program within the district's priorities. So that is so important to us, so that this is really integrated. When we say all, we mean all, even in advanced learning and gifted ed. We're talking about the inclusion, and it needs to be something that's just right in line with what the district is doing through our policies and their practices.
That vertical alignment, so often, we expect something to be different their senior year. Well, things just aren't going to magically happen over that summer. We really have to be working at this from the moment we are given the great opportunity and responsibility when they walk into our buildings or come online or however, right? To really wrap around those services, so that way our students are optimally developed, and when they do graduate, they have options for their futures.
And that's a great segue to practice, standard 2, practice H, because we already have this practice implementing intentional strategies. You can see that there, implementing intentional strategies to broaden access to advanced learning opportunities. But this is not about one strategy here, one strategy there, one strategy in first grade, one senior year. It is about, again, developing, from our call to action, developing mindsets, policies, and practices to broaden access. It's about programming. It's about intentional efforts at all grade levels. So there's your vertical alignment. And this one adds including talent development. And the talent development that we're talking about, we really focus a lot on early intervention with our K-3, ensuring that advanced learning opportunities are available to all students K through 3. Because again, as Neha mentioned earlier, it's about exposure. And that's our job in school, to make sure that we're exposing and giving students these experiences. All the way to, we even have legislation, advanced math legislation, that includes students who score 5, whether or not they're identified as gifted. And then all the way up to the high school years, where we're talking about bridge programs and pre-AP programs and AVID, preparing students for the highest level of academics. And then our standard 3 talks about the differentiated curriculum and instruction. The what that we use, I guess, to serve our students. And, with G, we're talking about what I just mentioned, cultivating and developing the potential of young students. We're talking about all K-3 learners. That there is intentional programming to expose them to advanced learning opportunities, all of them K-3. So a district would need to respond to this practice. How are they doing this? How are they following that part of our framework? And then there's some other minor changes aligning with academic and intellectual needs. But we'll move to standard 4. Standard 4 highlights the personnel and professional development who serve the students, who meet the needs of the students. And we have 2 new practices we're excited about. One is about the recruitment and retention of our AIG licensed teachers, professionals. And we also included those of diverse backgrounds, because we know that's an effort across the state, because our students need to be able to see themselves not only in the classroom with their peers, but in their teachers. And then the other new practice aligns with our strategic initiative, with our critical action about focused professional learning opportunities. We're asking them to ensure that in their district that they're providing focused professional learning opportunities that will focus on equity and excellence, that will help develop mindsets, which will lead to the policies and practices that are equitable. So,
and this is where we really would like to partner with Stacy in kicking up a notch some of the PD that I know y'all have been working on the last 2-3 years, and to see how we can adapt that for this lens, and share what we already have, but also adapt it to help educate our professionals in some of those great things that you have in that PD that you've already developed. So that's something we will definitely touch base with Tiffany and Kelly and others about as well.
Great. I think another topic that we can talk about is how do we develop two-way partnerships with our parents and guardians to support the needs of our AAG learners, not just their academic and intellectual needs, but their social and emotional needs. That'd be a great conversation, as well as, how do we partner with parents so they feel like they can serve on an advisory group, which really develops and implements and monitors and revises the plan. They help the coordinator, revise the plan every 3 years. And then finally, D is about communication. What are the best practices? What are some things that we need to be mindful of and think about? Of course, this practice does speak to, making sure that information is provided about these certain things, but also responding to any diverse language needs in the community. So how can we partner there? And then finally, our last program standard is about program accountability. So we will also encourage them and help them disaggregate their data for this first practice is about student achievement data, and we're asking them to recognize patterns and trends over time. And again, bringing back into how does this information, how do these data inform mindsets, policies, and practices? Again, also with E, which is not focusing on student achievement, but yet focusing on the representation and retention of our students. And this is one I believe that we are adding also referrals, because I think Dr. Oxendine was able to pinpoint that referrals is missing from here, and that's something she's hearing in districts. So I don't know if you want to say any more to that, Sneha.
No, absolutely. I mean, if you can't be referred for identification, you'll never be identified, right? I have my own theory about that, but we do have a process for it. And so how do we help also look at that data, right? And so it's kind of like if you never get into the door, you can't experience what's inside of it. So how do we ensure we're looking at all of those steps? The retention piece, absolutely, all of that, but depth and the representation. But to be represented, you've got to be heard, right? And so we want to really make sure that's not a barrier, again, to serve.
Right, it's about broadening access again. And you see that through all of our standards and all of our practices. And at the very end, we like to ensure that they share these data when they're doing their program evaluation, that they're sharing that with their community. They're showing that with all of their stakeholders and of course, school and district folks as well, so that they know what they can improve on for the next year, the next 3 years. And so that highlights our program standards. And this is where we are with our equity and excellence. We're really excited because we've done so much work, provided them a lot of resources, our coordinators, and we're looking for full implementation in 22-25. And we look forward to your partnership.
And we know that this isn't gonna fix decades of long-term issues, but what we want to do is progress towards mitigating barriers, expanding opportunities, and really focusing urgently on ensuring we are looking at all of our students and serving all of our students. I know we have a couple of minutes. Would love to talk with you and see some of your thoughts and ideas. If you see something, I know we definitely will reach out and get some additional feedback about our general programming for sure, but in particular about the standards or any other thoughts.
There are not any additional questions in the chat at this moment, so I will give others a minute to ask any questions if they would like.
Great.
And I will share one request from the chat, which is a really great one, which is ask Dr. Coltrane and her staff if they could share a few essential questions for the state students to take back to their schools and communities. Dr. Coltrane, you just talked about what the advocacy could look like if state members go back to their communities, and a general idea of what that could look like if they were to advocate.
Absolutely. I think knowing this focus is clear from the state board and from the department, the more you can urge your particular communities to get involved in the development of these programs, the better, especially in your communities that have significant numbers of Native students in their school districts, right? To make sure that whatever plan is developed in response to these standards really address the local needs, whether it be in Robinson or, up the mountains or wherever, in all your other communities. So I think that is huge to be aware of this work and to really advocate for the intentional design of programming and systems to address the needs of our Native population.
Yeah, I think that you could align questions, we could align them for you, but you could also align questions with each of the program standards that we've reviewed today. How does a student get identified as gifted? Asking that question to someone. How do parents and how does the community know that? After that question, how are they served? Do you have students or do you have teachers of color who are working with the students? How are you partnering with families? And as Sneha mentioned, being a part of that conversation and how the district is responding.
This is Olivia. I have a comment. Of course, I'm always enthralled by the work of AIG and Sneha and her staff coming before the State Board of Education with such enthusiasm and invigorating information. I do think the idea of gathering some and providing some, and you hit on it just a minute ago, Beth, Ms. Cooper, in your comment. Did I get your name right? I hope I did.
You can call me Beth.
Cross.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. Just some of the basic factual questions, like how many students, how many American Indian students do we have in AIG programs in the school district? How many in the high school? Just some fact finding will get the conversation rolling and convey to the superintendent and principals and others that we have a Stacy member nearby and they're asking pertinent questions. So I look forward to the questions that you're going to offer.
Absolutely, I love that. I think groups like yours can really help move the intentionality and hold, in a positive way, our districts more accountable, through your interest in advocacy. So we will definitely get you some thoughts and some questions, especially next year when, we will do that soon, but especially next year when they're developing these plans. So like Dr. Robinson and I said, somebody can say to a local superintendent, hey, so talk to us about how you're thinking about engaging the community on this issue, et cetera. So that's a great idea, and we look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure today.
Thank you guys for joining us for those updates, and we look forward to future collaborations. Thank you
so much, everybody. Have a nice afternoon.
You too. Right, we will now break and return at 11:40.
Everyone will be started back in 1 minute.
At this time, we will reconvene from our break and continue with our agenda. Welcome back, everyone. So next on our agenda, we will receive updates and information from the Early Learning Department. Joining us is Ms. Amy Rain, Director of Early Learning and Read to Achieve. Welcome, Ms. Rain.
Good morning. Almost afternoon.
Yes. Dr. Beatrice, if you will share her PowerPoint. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Chair Lee Locklear, and also thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, board members, as well as the council for the invitation today, and allowing me to share a little bit about where we are with our early literacy work, as well as the legislation. I know a lot's been happening lately, and so we have started working a lot behind the scenes, but also trying to keep people as up to date and up to speed as possible. So thank you again for having me. As we continue to move forward with our work, our goal is to always remain in alignment with our state board's vision, mission, and goals. And if you'll remember, not too long ago, the state board also created the collaborative guiding framework for early literacy. So we keep that in mind as we are working through those 9 elements as well. And then in January, with the addition of our superintendent, we also added in her focus for the North Star, making sure that every classroom had a highly qualified, excellent teacher. And then realizing that this wouldn't happen overnight, we shifted from an approach of each child, which still is super important, but starting with the teachers and their knowledge and making sure that they have what they need to be equipped. Which takes us to our work today. So after the recent update to Senate Bill 387, which is your Read to Achieve Act, we identified some general steps to begin to capture what the early literacy implementation progression model might look like. So each step in the process needs to build on basically on a solid foundation with, if you'll see here in step 1, aligning the policies as well as funding with our feedback from our stakeholders. And so that's been a piece we've had happening for a while now, starting with that early collaborative guiding framework when they talked about the flexibility of funding and how we could look at making it more meaningful as we were sharing those funds or spreading those funds, disseminating them to the district. And so as we're moving along the continuum, step 2 is our focus on science of reading professional development for all pre-K through 5 teachers, as well as an administrator and a coach from every elementary school. And the way we went about that is when House Bill 196 named letters or Voyager Cypress, which is the letter-specific program, program, we began to work with the letters team to talk about what that might look like. And then the superintendent also announced any individual who has successfully taken Read to Achieve within the last 5 years would also be able to qualify for an exemption from participating in letters. And so just a little bit about letters. It's a research-based professional development that equips teachers with the skills that they do need for the fundamentals of reading instruction, including what's named in the legislation, which is your phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, even writing and language. And so letters also has been back more than 30 years with research and a decade of proven success. And we currently have about 9 to 10 districts who have been implementing letters to date. So one specifically is a front runner in that, and we're working with them and Mississippi for lessons learned as we plan on our next steps, which moves us ahead to step 2 on the next slide. So we are announcing at a special call meeting hopefully this month. We're waiting on some final pieces, the cohorts based on interest surveys that we did from all of the districts, from the superintendents and chief academic officers, and asked if they were interested in participating in cohort 1 or if they needed to wait based on what was happening in their district. We know that coming out of COVID, there's a lot happening, and so we just wanted to respect who was prepared and ready and who just needed a little more time. And so you'll see here that the first cohort, after we do the naming of the cohorts, we will, in the first cohort, we'll have around 38 districts, and that's been fluctuating a little bit depending on districts that may reach back out now to say, can I wait if I was in cohort 1? So we're still looking at those pieces and trying to respect where they are and what's coming up. But cohort 1, it mentions here, we start that planning in July. It doesn't mean the training starts in July. It just means it starts sometime in the fall. So summer or fall, those districts will have the opportunity to begin, and they'll work specifically with Voyager around their schedule so that they can balance all the initiatives and things that they have happening. And then if they indicated they wanted to wait, they were either in cohort 2, which will begin in the winter, probably after January, and then cohort 3, of course, is the last cohort that would begin next summer. With that, we have Dpi Consultants. There are 16 which is broken down into 8 early learning consultants and 8 early literacy consultants that will be trained to help support our districts because they work through the regional case model, and they currently are in the field supporting and building those relationships now, and they'll continue to help with that. And then once they have gone through the training, they will be receiving, after cohort 3, facilitation training so that we can sustain their knowledge and their support level to increase that. Recently, we have been working with our finance department here to look at our current EPSA funding to make sure that we are able to cover or provide funding for classroom time that's missed, whether that's your stipend or work day, where teachers are making sure that we are reimbursing them for the time that they are spending in this training. So step 3 focuses on how do you sustain that. As we know, the DPI staff, our consultants have more than just science of reading that they work on. They also help with NCELA, which is your kindergarten entry assessment, teaching strategy goals, math, science, a lot of those pieces, SEL. So one of the plans we looked at for sustainability is similar to Mississippi's model. And if you'll see here, we have an org chart that lets you know how this will work and how we're planning together as far as the collaboration. And so the district implementers, we are asking legislators if we can use our current funding to work on a model for a district implementer just for science of reading for that sustainability. And they would be the experts in the area, like your local expert. DPI would help with the hiring process and what that looks like, and make sure that we are continuing to coach the coaches, if you will, of those implementers. But the initial placement and numbers were based on the number of teachers per region. But we also realize we will have to be flexible with that. Some may have to move over to other regions to help support. And then our goal is to continue to expand that model based on funding and based on the needs of your low-performing schools or the transition of schools or even new schools. So as we continue to expand this model, we hope to also expand the support for the long-term sustainability. Step 4 focuses on our curriculum instruction. And so this is where we're working with our Standards Curriculum Instruction team, SDNI, and there's a process named in the Reach to Achieve legislation that defines, when we talk about standards, it really is focusing on a definite way that is effective for teaching literacy. And the word guidelines is what comes to my head when I think about it, but guidelines sometimes can be optional, and so we are currently in the process of identifying what are those research-based standards that we need to ensure are happening in every classroom for every child at core. And so this kind of lets you know the timeline. SDNI currently, they just put out, I think today, because we had this week, are asking for stakeholders to be involved in that process. So look for that so that we can make sure that we have representation from this group. And if you haven't seen it, just shoot me an email, or I'm happy to get a point person here and make sure that the SDNI division reaches out and make sure that you have access to that opportunity as well. Because our goal is to make sure that we have as much of a diverse representation, that we're focusing on all children and what they might need for core, and then as well as the teachers there as well. And then step 5. So while we're hoping to have a strong core, and that's our goal, is to get all students proficient on grade level. We also recognize that children come to us with various needs, and we need to continue to meet them where they are. So this part of legislation, where we're working with IAS division, what used to be our MCSS division, which is focusing on interventions if a child doesn't meet proficiency initially, or they come and need additional support. And so this plan focuses on aligning the literacy intervention plans that are happening in schools in a uniform process or consistent process, so that it's sent back to DPI through our regional case managers, so that we can provide any kind of feedback or thoughts on what they may want to consider. Because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, and so as we're able to look at those plans and provide feedback, we can also provide the support through that regional case manager model. And this will help us do that in this timeline. Once the district submits the implementation plan, one of the things that they'll also be working on is individual reading plans. So while this focuses on our kindergarten through third grade students, this is a tool that can be used beyond that, looking at, what is it that a child needs or where are their gaps. And so when they take that first diagnostic assessment when a child enters school, this allows the teacher to look at every child almost in a personalized learning approach, to see what they do need and what timeline they might need that with, or but then begin to create a process to meet the needs of those particular children. And this can be started at any given time. It can start at the beginning of the year, it can start after you do a mid-year diagnostic, or even in between when you're on progress monitoring and you see a child struggle with possibly vocabulary. So how do you drop back and what interventions does the child need to look at that lowest deficit area to help support there. The good thing about this plan is it can be aligned to what's already in place with MCSS, your multi-tiered systems of support that are happening through IAS and our Exceptional Children's Department. We're working closely with them because you want to look at the whole child, the academic as well as the behavior. Is there a root cause for one or the other, or should they have support running parallel? So this will serve as a model to help combine and continue the collaboration on what the outcomes are for each child and how we can support that. And then the other piece that's important here is making sure that a parent is involved in those conversations along the way. It's super important that we have their voice at the table as a collaborating partner. So as we're moving throughout that process, the process will continue. We'll just we'll work on a little more specifics than we have in the past. Another new piece of the plan that we're focusing on is reading camps are currently considered, or will be considered, an intervention. And I know that's kind of been the case in the past, but it names it as an intervention. So when districts are submitting their plans, their intervention plans, they also need to include what reading camp is going to look like. So it's more of a long-term sustainable approach. And then with that, what are they doing to recruit the highest qualified staff? You know, what are the perks of me actually helping lead in a reading camp for the summer? And so that is a piece that has to be included in their intervention plan that has not been in the past. And this summer is the first time through our house bill that they are working on bonuses for teachers in addition to what they've done in the past. We'll still have our performance bonuses through the year based on legislators, but this will provide additional support. So a teacher, a signing bonus for a third grade teacher may be $1,200, and for every child that's proficient by the end of it, it's $150 per child. Just to help with the emphasis of why it's important to help our children. And step 7, certainly last but not least, recognizes the importance of our partners as parents. So Read to Achieve, it mentions a digital children's reading initiative platform, and that's going to offer free tools and resources aligned to the components of the science of reading and grade level standards. So the way this will be set up is a parent could use this tool, or a community member or a volunteer or tutor could use the tool to look at a child who's struggling with phonemic awareness in first grade, and they can go look at specific strategies that would help their child if that's the area that the teacher has shared they're struggling with, so that we can extend our partnership beyond the school day. It's certainly not the responsibility of every parent. If they have a working schedule, that's our job. But what can we do to help support parents who are able and willing to help move their child along and be a partner in their success? And so it's just to help cultivate that long-term partnership as well. And with that, I know the department, we are committed to supporting our teachers and literacy specialists as well as our administrators. And we recognize this is a journey. We are just getting started, so we welcome any feedback and any questions along the way. It helps us think outside of our own knowledge. And so the other piece that I want to mention too is, while it's not named in legislation, we are focusing on the importance of the infrastructure. And just because the legislation names supporting our struggling readers, while that's important, we also want to make sure we continue to focus on core, which is our tier 1. Where do you meet those children who are just like Snehan had just presented? You have to meet children where they are. So how will you continue to challenge and grow the children who come in with a knowledge base while you are also parallelly working with the children who are struggling and need that additional support? So with that said, though, I want to thank you for your commitment because we can't do this in isolation. And so, and I also appreciate the advocates who are making sure that we're reaching all children outside of our own knowledge base. So if there are any questions or feedback, I'm willing to listen to that and take notes and move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Rain. Are there any questions at this time?
This is Dorothy Yates. I just have a general question. So the students that are entering the public school system at kindergarten, are they expected to be able to read at some rate at kindergarten? Or what is the baseline that children are expected when they first enter the school system?
So what we do is there's an assessment, or like a one-on-one assessment you would give a child that's fairly informal. And there are benchmarks that say, here are predictors of what a child would need to be successful by third grade to stay on track. And so, but the reality is, and I worked for Title I inner city school for 15 years as an administrator and 20 years as an educator. And so we recognize too that not all children have had exposure, the same exposure or background knowledge to meet that criteria in order to move forward and stay on track. So this preliminary assessment gives a teacher an idea of where is this child in this continuum to ensure that they are going to be successful long term. So there are criteria that give benchmarks at certain points but we also are realists and understand that they don't all come to us at the same level. But they go by the guidelines just to see what that criteria might look like. Does that help answer that?
I guess I was just looking for a more concrete answer. And if students are not reciting the alphabet or reading sight words, does that put them at being at risk?
It will show that if someone does not intervene, that they could be at risk long-term based on the rigorous standards and expectations that are set in place in our school system. It does show up that way, but we also recognize that, for some children, they're going to learn at different paces and different rates. So it may take 3 years, but it shows whether a child is on track to be successful, and they list them as, give us early warning signs to say, make sure you intervene with this child in this area, because if they don't maybe they can name letters, but they don't understand that B says bus, or makes the bus sound. What do we do to make sure we intervene there? But it would identify them possibly at potential risk, but we also recognize that early in the year, so what do you do to differentiate your instruction to meet those children, as well as the children who come in already knowing the sound?
Thank you. And will the remediation programs be replaced with the new intervention plan?
So I think different schools and different districts do it different ways. For example, if I walk into a classroom, what happens typically is a teacher may be presenting a new skill with her whole class, but then she begins to break up the children in small groups based on what they know and what they need, and meets them there, so that not necessarily remediation as much as an intervention or just an extension of core. And then if a child is still struggling from there, they may get additional support with another teacher or even with that teacher. So a lot of times, the further behind the child is, we typically decrease the ratio of students they're with. So instead of being with the whole group, they might do with a group of 6. And we increase the amount of time that they get. So they may get additional 10 minutes. So we don't want to send them to a remediation necessarily when we're just trying to play catch up for what they might not have experienced in life or with background knowledge. And then they move through that continuum of what we call tier 1, 2, and 3. If you've tried these pieces and they're not working, what do we do next? And is that remediation at that point? So it wouldn't really replace. Some districts are doing a great job with this. They already have this in place, and others are learning how to move through that process. So it may replace some of the practices that people are learning were not successful and help have them consider other opportunities to improve, or in some places it may just help support that current model that is showing to be effective or proving to be effective.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We also have a question in the chat. Ms. Margo, would you like to ask your question?
My question is, will they give teacher assistant for the higher grades, being that some of the kids are passed along or promoted that need help, and when you get to this higher grades, they don't have the additional help in the classrooms? Have y'all considered putting a teacher assistant in the higher grades?
Great question. So that's one of the things we're working with our standard curriculum instruction team to talk about. This doesn't, just like I was saying earlier, this is a journey. It doesn't stop at 3rd grade. While this law or legislation focuses on 3rd grade, it certainly can't end there. And if a child moves further along in the grade level because they, for whatever reason, the way it should be designed is those children continue to receive support no matter what grade. And even if the teacher needs to change the schedule a little bit, the personalized learning that's on that one of the strategies earlier, even if you have to alter your schedule a little bit to make sure the child is what I call double dipped. So they get the whole group, they get the small group with the teacher, and they get an additional small group amount of time. We are looking at that process for K-12. I just know it will take some time, so that's why we're working closely with standards and curriculum as well as IAB, because once we get this in place, we want to make sure that they understand this needs to happen all the way through K-8 specifically, and I know high school is a little bit different. So what does that look like with your current staff? And as an administrator, my assistants weren't assigned necessarily just to K-1. While they were there to help support, they also had lots of time where they were helping upper grade students as well. And so how are we utilizing our current staff? And if that's not working, what funding or support do we have in place to provide additional staff? And so I think it's on a need-by-need basis. Any other questions?
Thank you. And I noticed that you guys have a Google site and you've kind of created some modules with some videos and blogs to kind of take you through that science of reading. So I have included that link here in the chat.
Thank you so much. We are currently building that, which is great. I'm glad you put that out there. And it just gives you an idea of what the Office of Early Learning has happening right now. And we are continuing to work with our communications team, so you'll hear lots more as we go, because we are in the transition of the past Read to Achieve legislation. Most of those pieces don't begin until July 1, so we have both things on there right now. So if you see it looks a little different right now, it's because we're transitioning from the previous legislation to the new legislation and trying to add those as we go. But we will continue to build that, and that's a great resource to go to for some basic science reading knowledge as well.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Before we move to Dr. Leslie Locklear, I would like to recognize Mr. Will Powell today before he leaves. Will has worked in the field of education for over 18 years, and he has also served on Stacy, and he is ending his term on Stacy. So the North Carolina State Board of Education and North Carolina Department of Public Instruction recognizes and appreciates Will Powell for dedication to promoting academic achievement and high school graduation for Native American students as a member of the State Advisory Council on Indian Education. Thank you so much, Mr. Will Powell, for your dedication and commitment to Stacy. You are appreciated indeed.
Thank you very much. It's been a great honor to be able to serve on such a wonderful committee as everybody, takes steps to try to strive and move forward within the best interest of not only of our Native American students, but for all students as a whole. So I thank each and every one of y'all as well.
Thank you. All right, so joining us today is Dr. Leslie Locklear. Dr. Locklear is the Fate and Fall Project Coordinator at the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. Fate actually focuses on teachers within education, and the Fall program focuses on administrators. Both of those programs are American Indian focused. Dr. Locklear joins us today to share some insights on positive identity development and contemporary imagery. Welcome, Dr. Locklear.
Oh, I was looking to see what time it is. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you all, and excited, and thank you, Dr. Tiffany, for inviting me to share. So I want to jump right in and share some information, and I want to tell you up front, a lot of this is collaboration of research that I've done, as well as research that I've explored regarding the identity of American Indian students. And I have titled today's presentation, Who's Your People? Understanding Southeast American Indians. And I use that terminology as a point of reference for those of you that are familiar with Southeast American Indian people. And I want to jump in by doing what we often do first as Native people is sharing a little bit about who we are and where we come from. This is extremely culturally relevant to our people in the South, particularly I know the Lumbee people are well known for this, and our catchphrase is often, "Who's your people?" And we like to give some context around our identity. I will say this is critically important with identity development, particularly for all of our American Indian youth. And I particularly think this is something that is often missing within the K-12 educational system. This is a conversation that often initiates all of our relationship building with our youth. I know I work with the North Carolina Native American Youth Organization, and this is often how our conversation starts. Is by me asking, who's your people? What is your tribal affiliation? Who are you and where are you from? What school do you attend? So just asking all of those questions and being relevant, I think is definitely something that is extremely important. So here on the screen, you'll see a little bit about who my people are and where I come from and how I made this journey to where I am today, a little bit of my background and who has been involved in that story. I think that is critically important and something that I hope that we remember when we are working with our youth is that it is important to ask them and allow them to share who their people are. So I'm going to ask for a little bit of involvement from each of you, if you would not mind opening up your chat. Another critical part of who we are, particularly who I am as a Lumbee woman, is my language and my dialect. And that is something that has been important to me all of my life and something that I felt like was not valued in the standard educational system. So if you would not mind pulling up your chat, I'm going to ask you to tell me, what do these words mean to you? So the first one is backup. And of course, yes, tobacco. So a lot of our community members just shorten up that word and get rid of that TO and go with backup. What about illic? Anybody know what illic is? Coffee. So I see someone, yes. So a cup of illic is often referred to as a cup of coffee. And I see someone else also got Kelvinator, which is actually the name brand for a refrigerator. And for most of my life, I did not know that it was called a refrigerator. It was always just the Kelvinator to me because I did not know that was a name brand. What about a nab? So I see a few people are saying that think nabs are crackers, particularly sometimes those orange crackers with peanut butter in them. And chow chow, somebody also stated what chow chow was. So they use it as a seasoned greens for cabbage. I think seasoned cabbage for greens, yes. So thinking about these words and the power that they hold and what they represent to the identity, these particular words to the identity of Lumbee people, and they may be prevalent in your tribal communities, but thinking about how do we see these words in the K through, and I'm going to use the terminology 16 because I also work in higher ed. How do I value, promote, and include these words and this dialect in the K through 16 educational system? And if it is not valued and promoted, why not? Why do I not see myself reflected in that system? Why is my identity not apparent in that system? So I want to talk really quickly about American Indians in the world today. And one of those particular topics that I always bring up is stereotypes. Our students are clouded with stereotypes. These stereotypes come from the media, they come from outside imagery. All of these stereotypes are apparent and are well known for a lot of our youth. They come into the classrooms knowing how the world views them. And I actually do an activity in my graduate class where I ask students to share with me, what stereotypes do you know about Native Americans? And I actually separate it between Native American females and Native American males. And I would say by far and large, the first thing that comes up is, wow, we don't know a lot. Those that existed during the Pocahontas time know more about that story and just the very gist of the Disney Pocahontas. But I will say the younger generation, we are completely invisible to a lot of them. So our stories, our histories, our contemporary life is completely invisible to a lot of the current generation. So Pocahontas was very popular for my generation. It was a Disney movie that premiered in 1995, and it may have been prevalent for your generation, but realizing that that is very outdated now. And of course, we all know it's historically and factually completely wrong, but for many people was the only point of context they had. The other stereotypes that they often associate with American Indian people is alcoholism, substance abuse, savagery, danger, violence. With the women, of course, it's always the long hair. It's the quietness, the reservedness, the shyness. So these are all characteristics that people assume about American Indians, that this is their perception of what they view of American Indians. And a lot of them, when asked where this came from, a lot of them said that it came from those stereotypes from the media. So thinking of the cowboys and Indian stereotypes, the idea that we all hunt buffalo or we all live in teepees, these are the stereotypes that exist around our people. And of course, we all know that these stereotypes are wrong. However, I've been teaching this class for quite a few years now, and these are the stereotypes that are still prevalent today. So if you do not live in a tribal community or are working outside of a tribal community, you are well aware of this. When I went off to school to Carolina, I had people question my identity. They wanted to touch my hair. They had never met an American Indian. They did not know that I existed. And a lot of that was because their K through 12 curriculum taught maybe in 4th grade about American Indians when it came to the Trail of Tears, and that was the extent of their knowledge when it came to American Indians. A vast majority of their knowledge was in a context of historical sense, and they had no contemporary knowledge about our people. So I said all of that to basically say that a lot of our students are walking into a world that is painted with stereotypes about who they are and who they should be, but even more, what I would consider more dangerous, is that we are often invisible. We don't even exist in the minds of some people. So of course, this is the map that I use to share with all of my students that take my course, but also our local tribal students, letting them know that there are other tribal nations out there. These are the contemporary lands of these tribal nations, where you can find them and where they exist and what this means. And the reason I think that this is so important is that we are showing the contemporary map of North Carolina, and while I value the historical context of showing the journey of our lands and knowing that historically all of this was American Indian land, I think it is important today, not going far beyond the land acknowledgement, to let people know that the land that you are on today, people still exist there that tribally have ties to those lands. So just letting those know and recognizing that this land still exists and is important. And a lot of that I'll talk about in just a second is tied to our place-based identity. So we are a place-based people, and we talk about our place in terms of geography and land. And for me, it is extremely important when talking about my identity as an American Indian to talk about this land. I think that this map, and particularly sharing this in our North Carolina schools, is extremely important. So, of course, I know you all are very familiar with American Indian education today, and thank you all. I love the SACE report every year, and as you can see, I include snippets of it wherever I can. But the number one goal of this is to show the disparities that still exist when it comes to American Indian students and their white counterparts, and what that means. So as you all know, especially if you've been serving on the SACE board for an extended amount of time, these statistics we of course hope will become more equitable, but every single year we continuously see that our American Indian students underperform when it comes in comparison to their white counterparts. And this is coming from someone who knows the value of standardized testing, but also knows the biases that are represented in standardized testing, but realizing that we are truly disservicing our American Indian students in the K-12 system when we only look at these things. So there's a lot more that we can look at in terms of their success, but also realizing that the outside world, this is their standard of measurement. And what can we do to ensure our American Indian students are achieving and performing in the K-16 classroom? So I will start and preface by saying I hate a lot of words on a slide, but I wanted to truly give you some context behind the research. And what does the research say about identity, representation, mascots, and stereotypes when it comes to American Indian people? The first point I know you've heard quite a few times, 87% of references to our people across the 50 states paints us in a pre-1900s context. So basically we don't even exist in 2021 because 87% of the information that students have heard about us is pre-1900s. So they don't know about contemporary American Indian culture. Of course, there is an entire lack of representation of our people across all the curricula, and this honestly makes it easier for people to stereotype and racialize our people when it comes to Halloween costumes and mascots because they don't know us. They don't know our culture, they don't know our history, but even more importantly, they don't know that contemporary American Indian culture is still alive and well because it is not represented in the curriculum. And I found some very interesting studies looking into the representation and the power of mascots and this negative imagery. And it shows that American Indian youth exposed to these images experienced decreased self-esteem, and it also led to lower achievement expectancies for American Indian college students. So again, looking at the impact of all of these stereotypical images, and I want to expand our thinking around stereotypical images past mascots. So I want to think about representation in literature, representation in media. I want you to think about representation even in the schools. What does it look like when we talk about American Indians? What is that representation like? And it's also found that I think it's really important when we talk about representation and identity that we talk about the way our non-American Indian peers view us. And a lot of that representation comes from a lack of information. So a 2010 study found that non-American Indian college students were more likely to show a tendency to stereotype other minority groups after they had been exposed to an American Indian mascot. So the exposure to American Indian mascots then led them to have a tendency to stereotype other racial groups. So again, the impact is exceeding far beyond just their view of American Indians. And of course, those last two bullet points that I think really drive home what I want to really point out today is that there is a lack of information about our people because there is not a bridge that bridges the information from the school and the home. So there's a lack of representation of our culture in the school curriculum, which then leads to the ability to stereotype and racialize our people because there's just a lack of information. And of course, Castagno and Breakaway have brought this up so many times in their studies about the integration of American Indian culture in the classroom and the value that brings. So what can it bring? So not only does it benefit our students and lead to healthy identity formation, more self-directed and politically active youth, who give more respect to elders and have a positive influence on positive classroom behavior and engagement, but also it increases the tolerance and knowledge of our non-American Indian peers. So I think a lot of times when I talk to educators about this topic and the integration of American Indian culture, a lot of them question whether or not it is a good fit for their school. So even if you don't have a large American Indian population, it is critically important that you diversify your curriculum and make it equitable and justice serving in terms of representing all students, no matter what your student body looks like. So now I want to talk a little bit of some of my own research and what I have found and what really bubbled to the top was important for our youth. So this came out of two different studies. One study was with Lumbee students who talked about their experiences in the K through 12 education and what were their barriers and successes. And another study was done with urban Indian youth in North Carolina, talking about their barriers and successes and what they found in the K through 12 system. And I want to talk about the positive things first because, of course, they're my favorite. And the very first thing that always bubbled up was the value of a place-based identity. So I met Native youth who maybe were Lumbee. They never grew up in Robinson Hook or Scotland counties, but this was their home. And they used that language with pride and power. And they said, this is home. This is where I'm from. This is my tie to my people. So encouraging our youth to have that place-based identity and know that our view of home is often very different culturally than others. So for example, I lived away for 7 years, but when I said the word home, I always meant Hope County. Hope County always was home to me. So encouraging our youth to use that place-based identity when we ask who's your people or where you're from, and letting also other non-natives know that we view home a little differently. They also talked about the defining aspects of their culture, food, religion, language, and here you have a collard sandwich. So all of these things were critical to their success. And the one thing that they talked about a lot that was truly one of the most powerful was the power of relationships. And these relationships that they built with natives and non-natives that led to their academic success in both higher ed as well as the K through 12 setting. So realizing that we have non-American Indian allies that are critical to the success of our American Indian students, particularly our urban Indian youth who are not in school systems where their administrators and their teachers look and sound like them. They also talked about the use of different organizations and finding their place, whether it was the Native American Student Association, the North Carolina Native American Youth Organization, Alpha Pi Omega, Phi Sigma Nu. All of these organizations provided a space for them to find their place when they didn't feel at home. And one thing that I do want to highlight for our urban Indian education students and things that they discussed, and some of the more negative things, were the racism that they experienced in terms of a lack of knowledge around their culture and also a complete disregard. A lot of them experienced that token Indianism where they were the only native, oftentimes those that I spoke to in their entire school, and they were expected to represent and speak for every single Native American. So how can we discourage that ideology that a student has to represent their entire tribe or ethnic group when in those settings? They talked, of course, about the lack of representation, whether it was from teachers and administrators or just in the general community. But I do think one of the positive things that they talked about, and for some of them this was life-changing, is the way in which that encouraged them to have a sense of self-advocacy. And I will say that I went back and forth with them because I don't want to warrant a fifth grader to feel like they have to advocate for who they are. But for a lot of them, this advocacy pushed them to explore their identity and their culture and who they were and figure out how can they continue to share that information. So now that we know the research and what the academia says about it, I'm a very proactive person in thinking about, okay, now what? What do I do with this information? I know the impact. I know the lack of representation. I know what mascots do in negative imagery. What can I do? I think the first thing and the most important thing that I share with everyone is to stay in the know. So knowing about the American Indian student population, I encourage educators to review their syllabus and their curriculum. What does it look like? Is there any representation of my people there? Advocate for faculty and staff that represent and reflects the student body in your particular school or setting, wherever you may be. And of course, my favorite one, review the annual safety report. I think that this is one resource that I thank you all so much for sharing because I share it far and wide and let people know this is a critical source of information when it comes to American Indians in North Carolina. And the one that I want to advocate the most for is talking to your American Indian students. They have a voice and they will actively share the injustices that they are facing, as well as the things that are going well for them in their school system. So holding that roundtable discussion with them. The other thing is just being aware of contemporary issues and what that means and how it may be impacting the identity development or negatively impacting American Indian students. So think about around Halloween time and Thanksgiving time, the Halloween costumes and the representation from Thanksgiving. Think about the way that mascots and American Indian themed names may be disproportionately disadvantaging not only, as we've seen in the research, American Indian students, but non-American Indian students. Think about contemporary issues such as missing and murdered Indigenous women, and truly encourage faculty and staff, those especially in the K-12 system and at the statewide level, to review the curriculum and representation and what that might mean. And the one thing across all the research that I think was so important and valued was the power to build relationships and to talk to tribal communities, American Indian youth, and also those educators that were seeking to learn and building those relationships. A lot of the research regarding the issues with mascots, they talked a lot about how either they were successful in overturning those topics or not successful, and really a lot of it came down to those relationships that they had within the community, the support they had, the allies that they had. So how can we continue to build relationships and share our community and culture with American Indians and non-American Indians to promote our platform to continue to encourage academic achievement for particularly American Indian students? And one thing that I want to encourage all of you, and I think that this is a very easy way, is think about just the basic representation. And I wanted to show an image here of a recent endeavor by me and my co-author, as well as youth illustrators, is we realized that there was a very simple gap in the literature about contemporary American Indian culture, particularly Lumbee culture. So encouraging those in your community, whether it's through writing a children's book or doing presentations, to talk about your contemporary culture. I think that that was one thing, particularly for me, that has been missing for a long time, and a gap that I seek to fill is sharing contemporary Lumbee culture with those that are not familiar with the Lumbee, and though they may not know our historical context, knowing that we are alive and well today, and that this is a part of our culture. So I will stop sharing. I tried, Tiffany, to stay within my time and see if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. Are there any questions at this time? There are not any in the chat, so everyone's welcome to ask any questions if you have any.
This is Dorothy Yates. Not a question, but just thank you for this presentation. And in following you with NANEO, I really appreciate how you help the American Indian students keep their identity. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dorothy.
Dr. Leslie, one person has asked for your contact information. You put it in there. You're on that chat. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Willie Powell. Are there any other questions? Thank you for this most important presentation.
Thank you.
The research and insights are really critical for schools and districts to lead initiatives as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. You were asked or invited to present on this work to support our SACE recommendation concerning mascots. And because at this time there continues to be 36 schools with American Indian mascots within 22 districts within the state. So this is very important, so thank you, Dee.
Thank you.
And just to follow up on Dr. Locklear's presentation, the State Board of Education is looking at SACE to respond to the mascot issue. And so Stacey really needs to provide some guidance to the State Board of Education, and as an advisory council, we should be clear in that guidance. When Dr. Oxman spoke earlier, she suggested maybe a one-page framework that includes do's and don'ts, or to consider or adopt a policy for the State Board of Education to consider. Dr. Silver and I have been speaking about this, and there is a 2002 resolution from Stacey that could certainly be built upon, or the future work kind of reference that. So I do think it's important that maybe Stacey appoints a subcommittee to work on the mascot guidance. So is there anyone on Stacey that would like to volunteer to lead that subcommittee or to lead that work? Yes, we can share the 2002 resolution with the Stacey members. And Dr. Leslie said that she's happy to share her citations and work to support it.
This is Dorothy Yates. I think it would be good for Dr. Leslie Locklear to work as an ad hoc member of this subcommittee.
Dr. Leslie Locklear, would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion, Miss Dorothy. And it looks like Miss Margaret Howard has agreed to volunteer as well. So, Miss Dorothy, are you suggesting that Leslie chairs that subcommittee as ad hoc, or did you want to chair, or you guys co-chair?
I think that she could serve as a co-chair with you as our chairperson.
Well, we were going to do a subcommittee, so just kind of looking for someone else to, if someone else will be willing to co-chair with Dr. Leslie.
Hello, this is Melissa Lee. I will help out.
Okay, great. I see Mr. Cooper has said that he was agreeing too. Mr. Cooper, are you agreeing to co-chair?
That new button is hard to find. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay. So, Mr. Cooper, you and Leslie could co-chair this, and then we have volunteers. You can document those volunteers, who are Miss Margaret Howard and Miss Melissa Lee. And I would like to ask Miss Dorothy if she would serve on that committee as well, to provide some insights.
Yes, I'll serve on the committee.
Thank you, Miss Dorothy. All right, thank you guys for leading that initiative. If you, Dr. Locklear or Mr. Cooper, if you have any questions, you can certainly shoot those to Dr. Silver or myself. And one of us will send out that 2002 resolution that you can maybe build a framework around, or to consider or adopt some policies. So we'll certainly share that.
What's the timeline on this finished product?
Dr. Oxenine was actually requesting, or she feels like having something by the June State Board of Education meeting. I don't know how doable that is. Dr. Silver, do you have any insights on, they usually meet the first week in June, right, Dr. Silver?
Typically I can pull those exact dates. So we have some urgency to the timeline. I would say you would want to get it done before Dr. Oxendine exits the board, just so you have a board member there to help shepherd that work along, so you have two kind of points of advocacy. So I would say you want to have it back before then by September at the latest.
Thank you, Dr. Silver. So if Dr. Locklear and Dr. Clifford would like to get together and kind of develop some type of timeline that you think is reasonable and then move forward with the committee, that would be great. With something prior to, September, at least by September. Thank you for your leadership and willingness to lead, and for you guys that are participating on that committee. Thank you indeed. We will now receive updates from our NCDPI liaison, Dr. Susan Silver, who is so instrumental in the work that we do. So we'll hear from Dr. Silver. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Locklear. Thank you everybody for hanging in there. It's been a very informative meeting and we appreciate you all. I certainly appreciate Dr. Locklear, and I recognize Dr. Bruce, who's my partner in this and helping put together meetings for you all quarterly. Just a few updates today. So one is that the State Advisory Council on Youth Education 2021 report was approved at the May State Board of Education meeting. Dr. Bruce sent you a copy of the report, and that means that it's now ready to be publicly distributed and shared with those you represent. We will also be linking it on the website. It's not there yet, but it will be there soon. It has also been sent out to all the Title VI coordinators, letting them know that they can now post it to their website and share it with their constituents. And over the summer, it will be sent to all superintendents with a letter from senior leadership here in DPI, making them aware of the report and stressing the importance of their using it. The other thing that happened during the May board meeting was approval of members. So we have 2 members who were recommended for second terms, and those are Rhea Jacobs and Camille Lanning. We congratulate them on starting a second term with Stacy. And then we had 3 new members come on board who will be coming on board. They are not yet, but they were approved by both the Commission of Indian Affairs and the State Board of Education. And they are Amanda Frazard, who's a member of the Hallelujah Tribe and who will be filling a parent role. Tina Lance, who's a member of the Saponi Tribe, she will also be filling a parent role. And Brandy Jacobs, who is Lumbee and a member of the Triangle Native Association, and she will be filling an educator role. And for new members, there's legislation that requires a balance of educators and parents, so that's why as the Commission of Indian Affairs is considering appointees, they do a balance of parents and educators. And lots of times we're fortunate to have both folks who are both educators and parents. In terms of the work of the committee, I am happy to work with the chairs if you need me to set up WebEx meetings for you, Dr. Bruce, and I can certainly help with facilitating that. Those are all the updates we have from DPI relevant to safety. Everything else we brought in partners from within the agency to share. The next thing you'll be getting will be a calendar so we can start selecting dates for the quarterly meetings for the 2021-22 year. So you'll be getting that probably around July so that we can start setting up meetings. And those new members will receive their notification that they've been appointed by the board, and they will join us at this first meeting of this new year, of this quarterly meeting, so they'll join the fall meeting. Are there any questions that I can answer for now?
This is Dorothy Yates. I'd just like to say thank you to all of the ones who served on the Stacy board and will be rotating off. We really appreciate your work and your commitment, and remember you will need to stay out a year, but then you can always come back and share in this passion that we have. And Thank you to the ones who are coming on board to serve. And a special thank you today to Dr. Susan Silver and Dr. Kelly Briggs for an excellent, informative program today on bringing us up to speed on things that are happening in our education world. And if we're more informed, then we can help our American Indian students be more informed. So thanks so much.
Certainly, our pleasure.
Hi, this is Yeah, this is Cameo. Hey, I do have a question. I didn't know if Dr. Locklear, I'm going to take the report and give it to our council and stuff, and I will, of course, highlight the recommendations and everything. But is there anything else, like from Stacy as a standpoint, that we want to make sure that we highlight in our report, so that we're all, when we do give these presentations or give them to whoever, that we're making sure, besides the recommendations, if there's anything else that we want to highlight and make sure that we're all consistent across the board and relaying a message or whatever.
Usually when I share the report, I do highlight those recommendations, and then I go to some of that data and I highlight some of that data. So you can look at your district data and highlight that for your district. I always think that's most helpful, and then sharing those recommendations.
And I would add an important thing this year is going to be to help people understand that there was no data for the previous school year due to the pandemic. So I think that's going to be something really important to stress. Depending on your comfort level, you may want to include that North Carolina was part of that pilot program, because I think that helps to show that there's recognition of the American Indian population on the national level, and that we're included in pilots like that. But depending on your comfort level around the content, and Tanya, I know you were part of some of that pilot, so you might be comfortable sharing, what it was about and what they recommended as North Carolina's key areas to focus on.
Thank you.
Cheryl and Michael, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So I look forward to our continued work with Ms. Araya Jacobs and Ms. Cameo Laney, and then congrats to our new members. I look forward to working with them as well. And this time, we will recognize the outgoing members of Stacy as their term comes to an end. These members were also recognized on May 13th at the state board meeting. This recognition is a new process, and we are very appreciative to the Director of Operations for the State Board of Education that has recognized this important service. So to Ms. Connie Harlan, the North Carolina State Board of Education and the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction recognizes and appreciates Connie Harlan for dedication to promoting academic achievement and high school graduation for Native American students as a member of the State Advisory Council on Indian Education. Thank you for your commitment and service, Ms. Harlan. And we also have Ms. Alicia Levy, I hope I'm saying that correctly, the North Carolina State the North Carolina State Board of Education and North Carolina Department of Public Instruction recognizes and appreciates Alicia Levy for dedication to promoting academic achievement and high school graduation for Native American students as a member of the State Advisory Council on Indian Education. And we also recognize Dr. Olivia Oxenine, the North Carolina State Board of Education and the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction recognizes and appreciates Dr. Olivia Oxenine for dedication to promoting academic achievement and high school graduation for Native American students as the State Board of Education liaison to the State Advisory Council on Indian Education. And we also recognize Mr. Goodwin Powell So the State Advisory Council on Indian Education is important, our work is important, and our service is crucial to American Indian students in our state. So definitely thank you, each of you, for your public service to Stacy and for dedicating yourselves to the work and progress of Stacy. It is definitely appreciated. Thank you indeed. All right. Are there any announcements at this time?
Hey, Tiffany, can I say something?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry to have a lot here. I'm sorry.
You're fine, absolutely.
Listen, I want to say two things. One, I want to give a shout out to Cumberland County Schools. Last year, Dr. Black and Dr. Conley, the superintendent, Black's assistant superintendent, they called me to their office and informed me that they were giving me a school counseling position. So for the first time, I think ever, Cumberland County Indiana office had a full-time school guidance counselor. And that has been wonderful for our department. And it didn't come out of my budget, it came out of the state budget that they have. Well, about 4 weeks ago, because our dropout rate among American Indians, mainly males, in Cumberland County has increased, unfortunately. I got another phone call 4 weeks ago that they're also funding me this coming year with a school social worker. So I just want to give a shout out to Cumberland County. They see the need for American Indian, for the education for American Indian students, that they are doing everything they can to help us to get the dropout rate down. Because right now I think we're at 72 to 73%. So hopefully this time next year when I meet with you guys, I can tell you that the dropout rate for Cumberland County American Indian students has dropped significantly. So I wanted to let y'all know about that. And then on a personal note, I don't know if anybody knows about this, but Dr. Connie Locklear's father passed away Monday. The visitation is today, this afternoon, and the funeral for her father will be tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Thank you for those highlights. And Stacy certainly sends condolences to Dr. Connie Locklear and her family, and much prayers and huge hopes. Thank you.
And Dr. Locklear, I forgot to share this when I was sharing out, but I have put a link to the resolution in the chat. It starts on page 4, I believe, 3 or 4.
Thank you, Dr. Silver. Are there any other announcements at this time? Thank you for dedicating your time and commitment to Stacy today.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry.
Okay, please proceed, Ms. Melissa.
I do want to say one thing. I noticed on the website, it says, at the beginning, it says Stacy, the whole wording of that. But then later on in the website, it says American Indian in the group name. So I was wondering, is it both or one, or what the thing is on that issue?
Which part were you referring to, Ms. Melissa?
So it is State Advisory Council on Indian Education. It's a glitch with kind of the techno people, and we've been trying. It's in the little tab. So the tab is CCI, I think is how it ends up being spelled out. The tech people either can't quite wrap their minds around that. We try to get corrected every year. We'll give it another shot. But yeah, they always end up putting an extra letter in there.
Okay, so officially it's Stacy, right?
Yes, officially it's the Stacie, S-A-C-I-E. I just see what you're saying on the website extra there. Okay. Yeah, officially it's the State Advisory Council on Indian Education, Stacy. Thank you.
And Ms. Leslie has posted an announcement in the chat about the new NATO conference. Thank you, Dr. Leslie.
Any other announcements at this time?
And I don't want to prolong things, but I want to thank Mr. Jackson he had shared about the feather ceremony in Cumberland County, and we replied to him saying how wonderful it was, and we discussed our disappointment with students in not being able to wear them. I am a senior this year, so certainly share that disappointment, and he reached out to us and shared some recognition and blessings with us, so I want to personally thank Mr. Rodney for that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Rodney. I hope others follow suit indeed. All right, if there are not any additional announcements at this time, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Angela Richardson, so moved.
And Melissa Lee seconds it. Melissa Lee seconds the motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No citizen out of room, that can be an aye.
Aye.
So moved. Dr. Silver will be sending out a doodle poll for meeting dates for the 2021-2022 safety meeting dates. Please complete that as early as possible so we can get those dates on your calendar. I hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you.